So who am I? Who am I? If you don't know me. So my name's Matt Haycox. I live in Dubai now, and I'm from England originally. Lived there for 39 years up until my COVID refugee transplant back in 2020. Now, as Charlie says, I'm a business owner. I don't do lots of events, don't do lots of speaking because I'm normally very busy kind of doing my own stuff, but I love to come to these things. I love to, I guess, tell some of my stories, meet great people, and hopefully teach a few things too. But my business life goes back to my early single-digit years. My old man had his own business, which I guess ultimately is probably what made me think in that direction. Also back in the kind of late 80s, early 90s, long before Instagram, long before YouTube, it was very much thought that the only real way you could make big money was to own your own business. It was either, I guess, be a Hollywood star or own your own business. And I didn't think I was going to be a Hollywood star, so I thought I want to make a lot of money. I've got to own my own business. And in my childhood years, that's what I ever really thought. Really, own business, make money. Own business, make money. And for 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, I'd read every business book I could get my hands on, and that's what it was back then, business books. There was no mentors on YouTube. There was no online courses. But we did have a magazine called Exchange and Mart, which all the front pages of Exchange and Mart, I can see someone as old as me nodding on the front here. All the front pages of Exchange and Mart were selling absolute rubbish. And then in the back pages, there was always 2 or 3 pages of, inverted commas, business opportunities. And these business opportunities tended to be send off a stamped addressed envelope with 20 quid in it, and they would post you something back which was going to tell you how to make 10 grand a week, doing nothing. And normally what they post you back is another 10 envelopes to send to someone else to sell them some more envelopes, or some kind of pyramid scheme. Tried all of those through my kind of early teenage years, and then I was probably 15, 16 years old, and a friend of a friend had just bought the spicegirls.com domain name. I mean, this shows how long ago this is. I mean, you can't buy any kind of name on as a .com nowadays, but this guy bought spicegirls.com and sold it to the Spice Girls management team for 250,000 quid. So I thought, that's going to be my plan. I'm going to buy a domain name. I'm going to sell it. I was a big Natalie Imbruglia fan at the time, so I thought I can kill 2 birds with one stone here. I can buy and sell the NatalieImbruglia.com name, and I can meet Natalie at the same time, and I can make money, and I can get with my dream girl. So went online, very, very surprised to find that NatalieImbruglia.com and NatalieImbruglia.co.uk were there and available. So I bought them for the couple of quid that they cost back then. And I put a little page up, coming soon, contacted Natalie's management team, who, again, it really just shows how long ago this is and how people's minds were at the time. When I contacted them and say, listen, I've got the NatalieImbruglia.com name, you guys must need it. This woman had no idea what I was talking about, and then accused me of trying to blackmail them. So we had a bit of back and forth, and unfortunately I got no money, nor did I get an introduction to Natalie. Luckily, I also didn't get a lawsuit, but I had to go off on my way and sold the site to a fellow stalker for £500. Not the millions I was hoping for, but it was I guess technically a profit. So on we go. I'd also then be going to the markets, buying and selling anything I possibly could. Tamagotchi pets, I remember at the time, blow up chairs, blow up cushions, anything I could do. Still wasn't really making any money. And one of my hobbies at the time was magic. I used to practice magic as a kid, and I wanted to buy a watch. I'd gone begging to my parents who wouldn't let me buy it, or rather wouldn't buy it for me, I guess in hindsight, thankfully. And they said, you've got to go and get a job and earn some money. So I thought, I'm going to go and do magic in the local restaurant. And back in 1996, 1997, there weren't as many restaurants around Leeds, and there was a fantastic restaurant called the Flying Pizza where all the kind of great and the good went on a Friday night. And I went and asked the owner if he'd let me be a magician there. He refused to pay me. Although later on he did start giving me a garlic bread when I finished my shift at the end of each night, but he said I could keep all the tips that I earned. And I'd go in on a Friday night, Saturday night. I was 16 years old at the time. and I managed to earn myself £200, £300 in tips, which, I mean, nowadays is not too shabby, but back in 1996, 1997, for a 16-year-old to be earning 500 or 600 quid a week was fantastic going, really. And I guess as a side anecdote, all the waiters who used to work there back then, many of them still work there now, just getting older and older. And I still go to this restaurant when I'm back in Leeds, and they all like to rib me about how much they used to hate me back then because I was nicking all their tips. And I think a big learning from that for me now, which I obviously didn't appreciate at the time. I think at the time I was just grumpy that they weren't paying me a wage, and laughed at by my friends who were saying, "What, you go to work for free and all they pay is a garlic bread?" But I think I learned the importance of being in the right vehicle. Not chasing a particular wage. Not chasing all the money at the front end, but being in a vehicle that can take me to where I wanted to go. Which back then was to buy this particular watch, and it got me there a lot quicker than any of my friends who thought they were earning £10 an hour, £8 an hour, whatever was better than minimum wage then. I was going to work for free, but I was ultimately making a lot more money. So finished my magic career in the restaurant a couple of years later. I never wanted to go to university. Not because I had any particular hate against university, but I just knew that I was going to go off and work in my own business, own my own businesses, and therefore it wasn't going to be necessary for me to go to uni. My parents, they were very, very pro-uni. I mean, again, going back to the era that we lived in, if you come from a decent family, if you'd been to a private school and you then didn't go on to university, you were a letdown to the family, really. I think it was also very much thought of as a waste. That why would a parent put you through private education to not go to uni? Because again, back then, if you wanted to have any kind of hope of a corporate job, you had to have a university on your CV. So off to uni I went, begrudgingly. Now, at the same time as going to uni, my old man, he just sold his business. He was kind of retired at that point and started to invest in a couple of things. And he put a small amount of money, like £25,000, £30,000, into a business that made uniforms and corporate clothing. So I said to my parents, while I'm at uni, let me go and work there selling. So I guess it's a bit of a compromise. I'd go and work in this business, and this business was an absolute shambles. I mean, it was a family business, not my family business, but a family's business that had been around for 25, 30 years. It was just running into the ground. It was, the staff were incompetent, verging on fraudulent. The customers hated us. The suppliers hated us. The banks didn't want to deal with us. And I'd be coming home. I still lived at home at the time. I'd be coming home, banging my hands on the table at night, saying, "Come on, Dad, you've got to come back to work. Come in and sort this mess out because they're just robbing you." And his money, his small investment, had become a medium investment, had become a big investment. And I was doing anything I could to try and drag him back in. He had no interest. He just used to say to me, "Look, I've had 25 years of your mother and 30 years of business. I'm just, I can't be doing with the griefs." I think after 6 or 8 weeks of me saying this to him, one day he just turned around and says, "You know what? You go in there. You do what you want with it. You can't make it any worse than these guys are now." And I went in the next day, and we started from scratch. I fired everybody, literally everybody apart from this little old man called Bob. I still remember him today, who worked in the warehouse. And we started from the ground up. New products, new business plan, new suppliers, new staff, new absolutely everything. And I think for me, this was 3 years of the best learning curve that I could possibly ask for. So the bit I missed at that point was after 6 weeks of being at uni, I also realised I wasn't going to be able to do uni and work at the same time. So convinced my parents to let me leave uni under the kind of guise that during the first year, if I couldn't make my millions, then I'd be able to quit work, go back to uni, and consider it a gap year. And I kind of always joke that 20 odd years on, I'm still keeping my fingers crossed that I don't have to go back to uni as a mature student in September. But 3 years of literally learning everything on the job. And looking back now, I don't think I knew what I was doing. I just knew what I shouldn't be doing. And I guess I was watching the other people do things wrong, used a lot of common sense, and used a lot of what I've been learning, I guess, from the books that I've been reading over the previous 5 to 10 years. And after 3 years of me running that business, we went from a £300,000 loss in my first year to a £30,000 profit in the third year. And it wasn't big numbers. It wasn't even big numbers back then. But for me, it was just the principle that we turned that corner, and I at the time had thought I'd learned everything I could possibly need to learn about business. I thought I've learned more in 3 years than most other people will be able to learn in a lifetime of business. And I always, I guess, felt back then and still very much feel now that you only learn things from the things that go wrong. When something goes right, you can pat yourself on the back. You can enjoy the spoils of it, but you don't really know why it went right. Whereas when something went wrong, you get to dissect it, reverse engineer it, and actually, I guess, get under the bonnet of what we can do better next time. I guess what I've learned as time goes on, whilst you only learn from the things that go wrong, it doesn't have to be you that's making those things wrong. And that's why, I guess, many years on, that's why you guys are here today, learning from people who have done what you want to do. How can you do it quicker? How can you do it cheaper? How can you shortcut other people's mistakes? So I left the corporate clothing business. I was about 21, 22 years old. And I decided that I wanted to go and work in leisure. Selling uniforms, even nurses' uniforms, wasn't going to be where I wanted to spend my future years. I wanted to go and work in leisure, bars and clubs. And this is where the exciting part of the story starts. So I had no qualification other than the fact I thought, I'm a 21, 22-year-old guy. I want to drink beer, work behind a bar, meet girls, and get paid for it all at the same time. So I went off and I opened a pub in Leeds, opened another pub in Leeds, and they were reasonably unsuccessful. They weren't terrible, but they weren't the best. And I realized what they were missing was some other kind of income stream other than just selling alcohol alone. Whether that was from DJs or from food or from door money or whatever it was, I needed multiple streams of income, and ideally multiple streams of high gross margin income. Now, at the time, I used to spend quite a bit of my social life in the local lap dancing bar. And I think from the time I spent there, I deemed that qualified me to understand the lap dancing model. And I knew the staff, I knew the girls, I knew the manager. I thought, that means I also know this business, and I can see that they've got a lot of income that I haven't got. And even if this doesn't work out for me, it's going to be even more fun than running the bars I've already got. So I poached a local manager and took him with me. Again, looking back, it was more, all these things were more by accident than design. But I think if I hadn't met this guy, and if I hadn't taken someone with all that knowledge and all that experience, I wouldn't be here telling this story today. And we went off to open our first club in Wakefield. I wanted to do somewhere in Leeds, couldn't find anywhere in Leeds, so we went and did a place in Wakefield. And that club opened in March 2024. March 2004. And hit the ground running. I wasn't making millions, but it was making good money. And literally from day one, we had cash in the bank and a full venue. But I'd used up all of my money to get this far. I'd also used up a lot of favors, a lot of credit, a lot of begging, stealing, and borrowing. And I knew I wanted to replicate this business model. Didn't have any money to do so. And 6 or 7 weeks into the venue being open, I get a phone call from a local finance company saying, can we come down and refinance your air conditioning for you? They wanted to talk about asset finance, sale and leaseback, all these words. I had no idea what they meant. But this man comes down to the office, explains to me that if I sign this paperwork, my air conditioning will effectively now become his, and I can rent it back off him for 500 or 600 quid a month, and he'll put 30 grand in my bank. Not convinced I understood what he was on about. Signed the papers, money's in the bank. I think, this is great. What else can I find to finance in here as well? And over the next kind of weeks and months, I started to refinance air conditioning, light fittings, toilets, and anything I could get my hands on, because I wanted to get a pot of capital together to go out and open the second venue. And again, around the same time, I got a phone call from Spearmint Rhino, who had obviously very successful in the US, hadn't been doing so good in the UK, and they wanted to sell some of the venues. I'd just about scraped enough money together from the sale and leasebacks and asset finance money that we'd been raising, and went off and bought a second club in Harrogate. Rebranded it as Wildcats, which was my brand, and then really the next 4 or 5 years, it was an absolute whirlwind for me. I'd learned how to borrow money. I'd learned how to open clubs, and I had a concept that worked for me. And in the space of the next 3 or 4 years, if we fast forward to 2008, I was the biggest lap dancing club operator in the UK. We had 11 trading venues, and I had a big 40-foot Hummer limousine with leopard skin seats, a karaoke machine, and a fireplace that I used to get driven around the clubs in. Quite cringy when I say it back now. I also had non-lap dancing bars, clubs, hotels, shops, juice bars. I kind of diversified into everything I could get my hands on and borrowed as much money as I possibly could. And as a 27, 28-year-old, I had all the confidence in the world. I had all these guys, all these bank managers, all these finance companies throwing money at me, and I thought the wheels could never possibly stop turning because this is all I'd ever experienced. You know, I'd heard of this recession, you know, this word that had happened many years before I was in business, but I'd never actually experienced it. I'd never imagined that anything like that could happen to me. But come the beginning of January 2008, I realized that we were really completely over leveraged. You know, I'd taken a lot of debt where we were borrowing it over short periods of time. We had very excessive interest rates, but it wasn't really the interest rates that were killing me. It was the fact that we'd be paying the debt back over 2 years or 3 years, not 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. So went to try and refinance it with a mainstream bank. A couple of the mainstream banks said to us, you need to make your business look like this, that, and the other. If you come back to us in 6 months and you've done that, then we'll refinance you. And if we could refinance like this, we'd take ourselves from burning a lot of cash, you know, making a lot of paper profit, but burning actual cash to being able to throw off, 7, 8 figures a year. So we went away, chopped the business into the state that they wanted us to do it, went back in June 2008 and said, right guys, we've done what you wanted to do. What's the next steps? Again, anyone who's as old as me can remember June, July 2008, the beginning of the credit crunch, what was called the credit crunch back then. No one really knew what was happening, but we just knew that liquidity was tightening, banks had stopped lending, and there was going to be some kind of recession, some kind of problems on the horizon. The lenders said, we can't do anything. We need to batten down our hatches and see where we get to. I had to go back to all my lenders at that point and say, sorry guys, we've got a problem here. I don't want any of you to take any haircuts. I don't want anyone to lose any money, but I can no longer pay you, over 2 years. I can no longer pay you over 3 years. I need 5 years, 12, 10 years, 12 years, whatever we need to get out of this. I went to all of my guys to try and structure a plan whereby I'd be able to keep the businesses, they'd all get paid back, and everybody would be happy. Now, I always say that if this had have happened to me kind of 12, 18 months later, I'd probably be telling a very different story now. But back then, whilst they knew trouble was coming, nobody had actually really felt any pain at this point. And all of these lenders turned around to me and said, well, we don't need to do any deals with you because you'll pay us anyway because we've got your personal guarantee. Now, I'd given 45 million quid's worth of personal guarantees back then. And I turned around to these lenders and said, yes, I don't want to go bankrupt, but I won't be finding 45 million quid. And they said, well, we think you'll find a way. And unsurprisingly, I didn't find a way. A couple of weeks later, I think the first lender served demand on me for whatever it was I owed them, and I didn't even bother fighting it. I think by that point I had 45 million quid worth of debt. I had 180 plus finance agreements from 50 or 60 plus lenders. There was, if I could bat this one down the road for a couple of months, the next one would come tomorrow. There was absolutely no point in trying to prolong the agony. I just needed to put my hands up, take my medicine, and move on. And in the space of literally 6 to 8 weeks from June 2008, when everything was tickety-boo for me, fast cars, big businesses, fast lifestyle, 8 weeks later, every single business I had was in liquidation. I'd been made personally bankrupt, and everything had stopped overnight. Now, just taking a little pause from my story, because I told this story when we were in Dubai. And someone came up to me at the end to talk about their problems, and they were saying, it was interesting listening to your story about going bankrupt for 45 million. I've got whatever the number was, 30 grand worth of debt, 40 grand worth of debt at the minute. I've got a lot of problems. But hearing your stories made me think, maybe mine aren't so bad. I took a couple of takeaways from that. And I think are worth sharing. I think, for me, I kind of get desensitized to the story because, it just happened to me and it is what it is. But I think ultimately going bankrupt is going bankrupt. Whether you go for 30 grand or for 45 million quid, the end result is still the same. And, I don't say that to trivialize it, but I think, for I'm sure most of you guys in this room, you're entrepreneurial, you're hungry, you want to keep rolling those dice. And, like I say, I'm conscious of picking my words to not sound reckless, but I don't want to say, if you're going to go bankrupt for 30 grand, you may as well go bankrupt for $1 million. But I kind of do mean, if you're going to go bankrupt for 30 grand, you may as well go bankrupt for $1 million. And, just have one more roll of that dice. And again, I'm not saying that to be reckless. I'm not saying that to be, to be defrauding creditors. But, don't let the problems feel too unsurmountable, because the other part of this is, I always describe bankruptcy as almost like dying when you've had terminal cancer. That people always say, well, what was it like? What's it like going bankrupt? It must be the worst experience in the world. But the way I see it is, you don't just wake up today and start having all these problems and then go bankrupt tomorrow. The bankruptcy is the end of a months, if not years, of process. You've had bad credit, you've been having red letters, your people won't supply you. People around you know that you've got financial problems. And as tough as they feel, that day of bankruptcy, if anything, it almost feels like a blessing. And my analogy, I always say, is it's like, if you've had terminal cancer and it's been going on for a year or two, and you've probably been in and out of hospital, you've been on chemo, you've been on radiation therapy, everything you've been doing, it's been a horrible experience. And when you die, it's probably a blessing for you, really. Yes, it's sad for the people around you, but it's kind of it's an end to what's been a horrible experience. So, as entrepreneurs, dig deep, keep rolling those dice, and don't let the shorter term problems stop you wanting to go deeper. And whilst I'm not trying to trivialize bankruptcy in the slightest, it really isn't as scary as you might think it's going to be, because if you're on the verge of going bankrupt, you've already suffered probably more than you will do over the coming months of actually going bankrupt. But that was me, bankrupt. Back to the story, September 2009. At the time, I had a 1-year-old daughter. I had an ex-wife, or a wife at the time. We lived together. And I woke up and thought, shit, yesterday everything was tickety-boo. I had Ferraris, Bentleys, staff and a business. And today I've got a baby who needs feeding and a mortgage that needs paying. What am I going to do? Now, I always get asked to talk about, my tips for bouncing back, and how did it feel? And it must have been the most horrendous experience in the world. How did you find it in yourself to go back to business again? And I always feel that I don't really have an exciting story to tell about it. I think when people ask me the question, they want me to tell this story of waking up on the first day after the bankruptcy and having months of depression and suicidal moments, and then some light bulb switched in my head. But it was never like that for me. And again, it was just a matter of getting back on the horse. I think we can theorize, we can moan, we can play victim, but none of that was going to get me any closer to where I wanted to be. And from a purely practical sense, like I said, I had a 1-year-old daughter, I had an ex-wife who both needed looking after and feeding. I always said I was never born to be poor. And if I was going to sit at home and watch Jeremy Kyle and complain about how terrible life is for me, it wasn't going to get me paid. So literally the day after I went bankrupt, I was back to work again. I think another reason I probably didn't find it difficult is, whilst a lot of people may disagree with me about this who know me, I always say I really don't have an ego. And I guess by that what I mean is I really don't care what people think about me. And when people talk about having a fear of not doing something, whether that's something positive, something negative, I think for me that fear always stems from not a fear of what you're going to think, but a fear of what other people are going to say about you. And I honestly believe that if you can remove the fear of what other people think about you from any of the decisions that you're going to make, it probably kills 90% of the arguments you've got about not doing something. But it really didn't bother me. Yes, obviously I'd rather be driving a Ferrari than walking to the bus, but I was still the same person, and I didn't feel silly in front of my friends, so off I went to work. And I started working in finance. I'd spent the last 4 or 5 years borrowing a lot of money. I always say that kind of borrowing all that money taught me how to help other people borrow that money and then become a lender. And if we kind of fast forward or condense from 2009 to 2024, I've spent the last 15 years basically taking everything I learned during those earlier years of running businesses, of borrowing money, and becoming a lender. So I no longer borrow, well, I do, but I've effectively taken all my skills of learning how to borrow money for my own businesses and turned it into a lending business myself. And I have, over the last 15 years, so where am I today? How these funky slides work. So fast forward to today, I've got an e-com business, I've got a bars and clubs, fundraising business, litigation finance business, and a banking platform. And I guess put those numbers on there, not to flex, because as much as I might like to wear a lot of pink on Instagram, it's not really my thing to talk about figures. But I guess I tell them to you guys in a room like this just for qualification, really. I mean, my bars and clubs will do 20 million quid turnover this year. My funding business has provided over 500 million quid worth of business loans to small businesses in the UK. My e-commerce business will do a 16 million quid turnover this year. And Cleek, which is a banking platform, which we'll talk about later, is just raising money off a £5 million valuation. So take from that whatever you want to take from it, but going bankrupt has not been a stumbling block in where I've gotten to today. I guess I'm not going to say if anything, it's been a blessing. I'd probably rather it didn't happen, but every day is a learning experience. And I think as long as you get back on the horse, there really is nothing stopping you from getting to where you want to be.
Hey, Matt here. Just interrupting myself quickly to say thank you for listening to No Bollocks. But did you also know I've got another podcast, Stripping Off with Matt Haycox? Very different. No Bollocks is the quick daily business tactics that you need. But Stripping Off, we just do it once a week. We go deep, deep, deep with a CEO, with a celebrity, with an athlete, with just an international, inspiring character. We find out what makes them tick, we find out how they got to where they got to, and we find out how you can learn and benefit from them too. So jump on over to Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, wherever you listen to your content, and I'll see you on a future episode.
That's me. That was quite a long story, that wasn't it? I need to find a way to make that a bit shorter, but hope you all took something from it. And so as I said at the beginning, I was writing a Twitter thread of 25 things that I've learned over the last 25 things I've learned over the last 25 years and 25 things I wish I knew 25 years ago. Some of what we're going to talk about are my ideas, some are other people's ideas, some I learned the easy way, some I learned the hard way, some I'm still trying to figure out, but I honestly believe that all of these are applicable to anyone, to any lifestyle, to any business. So I'm conscious of time. Some of them I can talk about a lot. Some of them I'll just talk about quickly. And if you want to ask me about anything in the Q&A at the end, then I can go a bit deeper. That's my bottom. I wanted to compete with all you young ripped people. But number one, be fundamentally different, not incrementally better. You'll probably hear me say a few times over the next slides about the fact that I don't really think there's many different businesses to invent nowadays. Yes, every generation there'll be a major new concept, a major new idea, but in the main, all the business ideas have been done, and all the people that do them do pretty much the same thing. Whether that's PTs, whether it's coaching, whether it's hotels, whether it's lending money or any of the things I do. And we could all try to be a little bit quicker, a little bit cheaper, a little bit whatever it is. But that little bit, I think, in a world of major noise and major competition, because every industry nowadays is a saturated industry. The only way to stand out is to do something fundamentally different, whatever that may be. Now, you know your business is better than I do, but so you'll know what that takeaway from that is. But don't take somebody else's idea and I'm going to do it a little bit quicker, or I'm going to do the same as him but a little bit cheaper. How can you present it in a completely different way to the point where ultimately you can, as we say there, create a new category or create a new niche. Number two, this is something I'm very, very, very passionate about. 1 is the most dangerous number. Now, I am obsessed with this, obsessed with the redundancy on this. Now, if we take you guys in this room, I mean, who's put some hands up who's got a very strong presence on a particular social media platform, Instagram, whatever that may be? None of you. Okay. And how many other platforms are you on?
In my case, to understand learning a small heat source, so it's a heat source of networks where I gain most of the lights from, so that's all I understand.
Okay. I guess, so where I'm going with that is, how many people do you see absolutely smashing it on Instagram, but for example, don't put any work into Twitter or an email list or a podcast or whatever it may be? And then when that Instagram platform goes down, for whatever reason it may be, it gets hacked, you lose your you lose your password, or traffic just migrates somewhere else, all of a sudden that fantastic business model is finished. Now, I say that in the context of Instagram because probably suits all you guys in this room, but we can apply this to so many, to everything. How many times have we got one supplier that's a point of risk? How many times are we overexposed to one particular customer? And the reason I said earlier about my banking platform, because so many things that you don't think of as a risk, because you never appreciate that these things may go down. Maybe that's just because you've never gone down before. Maybe it's because you don't know what goes on in the background, so you never expect it to go down. But back in the summer of 2021, I woke up to a letter from one of our banks, Metro Bank at the time, that said, we've decided that your account no longer fits our risk appetite. We're giving you 60 days to rebank because we're closing your account. I didn't really worry about it, didn't really think anything of it, because, oh yeah, no drama, I'll just go and open another bank account. At the time, I probably had 75 different limited companies. Over the space of the next week or so, every single one of those companies got a letter shutting the account in 60 days. I then frantically start trying to ring other banks. If anyone can remember the middle of summer 2021, this is a kind of COVID summer when banks aren't even taking telephone calls because they're all too busy doing bounce back loans and C-bills loans. Then when we get past the telephone calls, the banking appetite's just narrowing and narrowing. So if you're in a lending business, if you're an offshore person, whatever it may be, they've always got a reason why they don't want to open an account. And what started off as not much of a worry for me became a point where I thought, actually, we might be out of business here, not because we haven't got a business, but because we haven't got anywhere to put our money. I moved from bank accounts to platform banks. You guys will know your Revolut, your Cash Pluses, your TransferWises, one tier down. Started to open accounts with these guys. Easy to open an account. Once you start to put any meaningful amounts of money in there, the accounts get blocked, the accounts get frozen, the accounts get closed. And what had gone from no problem to a major problem was almost a terminal problem. I accidentally got introduced to somebody who effectively runs the rails that these banking networks work on. And I had a conversation with them. I was talking to the lady there saying, actually, I didn't want to speak to you. It's a misintroduction. I actually want to speak to some of your customers who can actually provide me the banking service I need. Whilst talking to her, I said to her, how much actually does it cost and how long will it take for me to open my own banking platform? And when she told me, I thought, you know what, I'm going to do that for myself, not because I had a desire to be in the banking industry, but just because I thought I need to control this problem so that it doesn't happen again. Like I said, we had 75 different limited companies, always opening new businesses. If we couldn't bank them, then we were absolutely out of business. In the space, we set off on that journey to open effectively our own treasury function. In the space of probably 2 weeks, I was just anecdotally talking to people at dinner saying what I was up to, and they'd go, actually, can you bank me? I've got a problem, I've just bought some crypto using my Barclays account and Barclays have closed me, or I've just received some money from China and my bank account's closed down. Whatever it may be, in today's world, everybody's got a banking problem. And I kept saying to these people, no, it's not what we do. We're not here to operate a business. We're just trying to fix our own problems. But having been asked so many times in the space of literally 2 weeks, I thought, actually, we've got a business model here. Let's commercialize this and let's operate a banking platform to help problem businesses, help people who've got reputational risk, help people who are in an unfavorable sector operate their business model. So I tell the story for two reasons. One, no one, until you've lost a bank account, can possibly imagine that not having a bank account is going to be what keeps you out of business. We all think, I need leads, I need customers, I need suppliers, whatever it may be. But in today's world, not having a banking facility is actually a real problem. then having opened this banking business for me, what I'm now also utterly obsessed with is making sure we don't just have one rails, one access to the banking platform, one access to the banking network for our platform. So we've now got 2 and 3 and 4 in the background. And I'm the same on everything we do. And I guess I just can't overstress that point of where do your leads come from? Who are your staff dealing with something? Everything's okay till it's not okay. So find as many points of redundancy as possible and, get 2, 3, 4, 5 backups and get them before you need them, because at the point that you do realize you need them, it's probably going to be too late. No is the most powerful word you can learn. Now, there's also a big contradiction to this. I think in my younger years, and I would still advocate it for anyone else, yes was probably the most powerful word, because you're surrounded by lots of opportunities. You haven't really decided where you're going. You haven't really got any money, and you should be saying yes to as many things as possible. Yes to that meeting, yes to that customer, yes to that opportunity, because you never know where any of them are going to lead you. But once you start to develop some levels of success, you then really need to start focusing, narrowing down, and niching down. I think, for me, it's been the same in business, and it's been the same in my personal life. From a business perspective, I've said yes to too many business opportunities, too many different things, which they all feel good at the beginning, but then as time goes on, I'm diluted, I'm spread too thin, and I'm just messing around on stuff that isn't making money. And I can start to close some things down and focus on the things that actually were making me money. And if I took the time that I was spending on things that weren't making much money and put that onto the things that I was actually good at, that were my core business, those core business would be 2x, 5x, 10x anyway. And again, from my personal life, far too many times I used to say yes to wanting to do things just to keep other people happy. Whether that was as simple as going to the cinema to see a film I didn't want to see, or doing something to help a mate out. And I'm not saying that I've become inherently selfish, but I do want to say no a lot more than I say yes. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. And your strategy is how you allocate your limited resources, time, money, whatever it may be. All our resources are limited to your unlimited opportunities. And I think it's really important in rooms like this, because we all go to these events, we're all watching other people, learning new ideas, and the opportunities we have out there are unlimited. But we need to pick ones that work for us, niche down on them, focus, and then cut out all other distractions. Build your network before you need it, quick and easy. As I said at the beginning of this, I spoke about networking at Charlie's last event, and I'm sure if you've not seen it, he can give you a replay of it. So I don't want to talk too much about networking, but your network is obviously so important for new opportunities, whether that's business, whether that's funding, whether that's meeting new people, solving a problem when there's something where someone in your network can help you with that. But it's only any good if you've already nurtured relationships with these people. So I guess just like we were saying that you need to have backup plans before you need them, you need to have your network ready before you need that as well. So it's never too early to start building your network. This sounds very boring, doesn't it? But it's something that I think I have made massive mistakes with over the years, and I think particularly in today's Instagram world of having everyone flying around in Ferraris and Bentleys and private jets. I think it's very easy to confuse wants with needs, and we talk about the trappings of success. But I look at a lot of if I talk about the last 25 years of business for me, where I've had lots of fancy things, I can't truly say I've enjoyed, certainly never mind 100%, I probably haven't enjoyed 20% of the time in those things, because whilst I've been able to buy them, I haven't, buying them has put such pressure or such stress. And this isn't me trying to impress other people, because, as I said before, that really isn't my thing. It's me doing it for myself because I think that I want it. But, big difference between wants and needs. I think, we've got to be careful what we optimize for, which is an expression I've heard a few times recently. I think, we can go out and say, I want to get that Ferrari, or I want to get that, I want to fly private on that particular holiday. But achieving that is one thing, but what are the implications of that? And an example I've given recently, we're here in Marbella. I bought an apartment here 2 or 3 years ago. This apartment worth about €3 million. I did a deal with a lady who sold it to me for 2.5. Better than that, she gave me a 5-year payment plan where I was paying a small amount for the first 4 years and a big bullet payment in the end. When I tell you the story like that, it sounds a phenomenal deal, right? I've got a half a million euro discount on the property. I've not had to go and get a mortgage, which I couldn't do, being an English person in Dubai, not in Spain. She didn't even charge me any interest on it while I'm paying for the 5 years. When I look at it like that, it looks amazing. But the flip side of it is I'm paying her I pay her a bullet payment of 150 grand every 6 months. Whilst it's interest free, whilst it's 500 grand discount, whilst it's a nice house in Spain, however you skin it, I've got to find 300 grand a year for a place in Spain. And like I said, I know it sounds very boring and not what we all want to hear when when we're trying to make more money. But I just think, for me, I've made the mistakes of not letting money be the provider of freedom. Almost, the money's been a tool to get more money and more money and more money, and just create more stress. And I think ultimately, if you've got stress, if you haven't got happiness, then all of the money in the world's irrelevant. So listen, live below your means doesn't mean spend 500 quid a month on your rent and eat rice and beans for the rest of your life. But I just think there's a lot of times when you buy stuff that we absolutely don't need. Hire fast, fire faster. Something I still haven't got right, but I've been getting a lot better at lately. I mean, I've had 20 plus years of staffing mistakes. I don't know, how your guys' business models work. I mean, I know a lot of you work for yourselves and work on your own, so you may not have had the pleasures and pitfalls of hiring and firing yet. But my biggest single piece of advice on that is hiring is guesswork, firing is certainty. So hire with ease, because you need these people to help you grow your business. But when you know something's wrong, you know it's wrong, and cut your losses as quickly as you can. Like everything I'm telling you today is from my years of making mistakes on doing this. So just because I'm telling you what to do now doesn't mean I've been doing that myself for all the years before. And when you start to leave bad eggs in a business, not only, yes, it's costing you money, obviously, when an extra month becomes an extra month, but that's almost the least part of the problem. The real problem starts to come in with the rot it causes with the other staff, with the fact that by retaining underperforming staff, you're almost giving permission to your other staff to work at that level. And I think people always think that by having a great team member around, everyone ups to their level. The reality is everyone drops to the level of the lowest common denominator. So when you've got problems, take decisive action and kick them out. And I always say as well that after 20 odd years of firing people, it never gets any easier. And there's been one time when it's been enjoyable because a guy was actually thieving off me. But even in the times where people aren't up to scratch, it's still not nice to fire someone. But the one thing I would say to try and level the playing field, if you're ever kind of torn inside, is that if most members of staff get offered a few quid more to go and work for someone else, they won't hesitate to come and hand in the notice, and you'll be lucky if they work that notice. So if you know that person's wrong, if that person's damaging your business, then bite the bullets and move them on. Everything's downstream from leads. We can say leads. We can talk about marketing. Anything around that ilk. It doesn't matter how good your business is. If people aren't knocking on the door to come and find that product, you've got a problem. I'm sure you've all heard the expression that it's not the best business that wins, it's the best known business that wins, and that all starts from leads. If it's not something that you're good at, find other people who are and work with them. When I say find other people that are, it was one of the hardest things to do nowadays is to actually find shit hot marketing staff to come and work for you, because the reality is in today's world, anyone who's really, really good at marketing is probably doing it for themselves in some way, shape or form. I've said that every business owner should strive to be a marketing rock star. I always believe that every business owner should know as much about as many parts of their business as possible, from the finance to the marketing to the sales to the operation. Doesn't mean you can do it better than everyone in your business, but you've got to know about it all and not delegate it. But I think of all of those things, getting good at marketing is probably one of the most important, because it is such a difficult skill to hire in. Every role in life is sales. I won't pretend to be a sales expert by any stretch. My sales strategy, for what it's worth, is to A, believe in your product, B, put more effort in than anybody else. I think the pipeline is everything. I think if you've got a fat pipeline, then you're not stressing about every individual sale, because ultimately, if you've got a great product and you're putting the effort in to a busy pipeline, then ultimately it will convert. But the key part of this is to realise that whether you're a PT, whether you're a father to your kids, whether you work for somebody else, everything we do is about selling. And if there was one skill that everybody should be learning, it is sales and communication. Funnels and ladders equal big money. Again, I'm not going to pretend to be a funnels and ladders expert. I'm sure I heard someone mention Russell Brunson earlier. Any of his books you've got to read. They're written in the context of online, but they're as applicable to bricks and mortar as they are to an online business. Ultimately, your funnel is your sales process. You've got to have one. And ladders, in simple terms, are how can you have cheaper and more expensive versions of your product. And I think one of the big things I've learned from studying a lot of Russell's content is that there's no ceiling to these ladders. That there's always a way to have a slightly more expensive product, or even a very much more expensive product. It might not have a huge audience, but there's always somebody who's got more money who's prepared to pay more if you can offer them more value and take something away from them. Embrace patience. Again, almost as boring as living below your means. But I think when I look at my big mistakes over the years, they all kind of revolve around trying to do too much too quickly, or if not too much too quickly, certainly do things too quickly. Again, we live in a world where you turn on Instagram and it looks like you can buy a course, work on it for 3 minutes, and drive a Ferrari the next day, and that just fucks with everyone's minds. It's bollocks. And I was actually just looking at Instagram a minute ago, and a reel just popped up. And it was Warren Buffett doing a speech, and he was talking about Coca-Cola. And today's net worth of Coca-Cola is $275 billion. In their first year of business, they sold 25 cans of Coke. Now, I don't know how long Coke's been around, probably longer than any of us have got to wait for patience. But it hammers home that concept of you're just not going to get these big wins tomorrow. There's no overnight successes. We were talking about podcasts earlier, and I think Charlie's saying he's 500 episodes deep. I have a podcast as well. I'm probably 350, 400 episodes deep. When you look back at that early content, it's horrible. Nobody watches it. The only way there was somebody, I think, who's in the room, that was asking me about podcasts when I spoke last time in Dubai. And I was saying that my main advice is just get out there and do it, because all I can guarantee, it was you, all I can guarantee is that your first ones are going to be terrible and no one's going to listen to them. But you're only going to get better by doing more, and you're only going to get more listeners by starting off with few listeners first. So embrace patience, love the game, and the money will come. So I'm conscious of time for you guys. I'll try and be quicker. A real CEO doesn't do any work. May sound contradictory, but I think, again, learning from my own experience, I spend too much time actually doing the stuff in the business, which then ultimately takes me away from growing the business. And again, we all know expressions like, you want to be working on the business, not in the business. But ultimately, what should a CEO be doing? You should be hiring A players, you should be delegating, you should be guiding, inspiring, networking, strategizing, you should be coming to events like this. But you can only come to events like this if someone's back in the office making everything happen. Again, that's all going to come down to systems and processes and the right people and the right strategy. But if I look at my problems and my businesses, too many of my businesses for too long, I have been the bottleneck to everything. And again, whilst it looks from the outside that business is good and making lots of money, Yes, I might be, but I'm run ragged in the middle of that, not being able to be as effective as I possibly could be, because, for every boat trip I've been on, for every holiday I've been on, I've never been able to do it without a laptop and without a telephone. The best investment you can make is in yourselves. I don't need to go much deeper on that because you're all here now. I'm a massive, passionate advocate for constant learning. I saw a stat which was frightening, which was something like 88% of people stop learning after they finish school at 18. As scary as it is, I see it firsthand all the time in my own businesses. I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give to anyone who doesn't want to own their own business but still be an employee is still to be learning, still be doing more stuff, because everybody always wants to come and ask for a pay rise. But I always say the reality is, when you work in a particular role, there's a very clear ceiling to that pay, ceiling to the pay in that. Yes, you might get inflationary increases. Yes, you might go from a junior to a senior to a manager. But there's very finite caps and a real ceiling on what you can earn. The only real way to be able to earn more is to broaden your knowledge, to be able to offer something different to everybody else, and you're only going to do that by learning. And again, also I get a lot of people coming to me saying, I've got $5,000 to invest, I've got $10,000 to invest. What do you think I should be investing in? And I always say, I'm not poo-pooing someone's investment pot, but if you've only got $5,000, if you've only got $10,000, you shouldn't even be thinking in terms of, should I buy a piece of property? Should I buy some Bitcoin? Should I buy this particular stock? You want to be plowing all that money into yourself, because until you've got $50,000, $100,000, $500,000, you're clearly missing something in your knowledge gaps, because you've only got a smaller amount of money. Sell painkillers, not vitamins. People will spend money on pressing problems and significant pain points. How can you create a sense of urgency in what you're selling? Obviously, vitamin C is nice, but when you've got a belting headache, Panadol is going to outsell it 10 to 1. Talent alone isn't enough. You need a plan. Whether you're a business owner, whether you're a member of staff, whether you're a sports player, whether you're a kid at school. What is your plan? Because otherwise you'll just end up with wasted talent. You can't change anyone. I think this is something I've probably managed to learn myself many years ago, but I think the hardest thing for me is trying to teach my staff that you can't change anyone, and not to let it kind of fuck with your mind and get emotionally attached to it. As that pretty picture of me says, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. All you can do is control how you behave in that situation. Whether that's to not be grumpy and not be stressed, or whether it's to remove yourself from the situation, or whatever it may be. But ultimately, you can't change other people unless they want to change themselves. It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. Again, not telling you to be reckless, but being an entrepreneur is about taking action, breaking through blockages, and getting shit done. So if something stood in your way, kick the door down and say sorry later. Don't ask a cat to bark, kind of ties in with that one. I've moaned a lot about people not doing what I've wanted them to do over the years, and I always find that I get the best results from something when I realise that every problem is of my own making, and that everything's my fault. And it's not that these people can't do what I want them to do, it's that I shouldn't be asking them to do it, because that is not their core competency. So play to your strengths, play to the strengths of the people in your team, identify what those core competencies are, and if it's not that, move them into something else. So build a great team and delegate wisely. Your prices are too low. Certainly not something I used to hear in my younger years. Gets talked a lot about nowadays. But, we're normally stuck in situations of people negotiating prices down. If you want to have a successful business, your prices need to be as high as possible. You've got to have high prices with big margins. You need big margins to be able to employ staff. You need big margins to be able to reinvest in the business, and ultimately, you need big margins to be able to take good profit home for yourself. There can only be one cheapest offer in the market. We look at like a Walmart out there, guys like that, they're phenomenal at what they do. The 1 in a million, the people that can make big money from selling things very cheaply. So my best advice is, how can you sell something more expensively? How can you offer more value and charge a higher price? The customer's not always right. I think, it's not just staff. Sometimes customers need a good firing too. You've got to protect your team. You've got to focus on high quality relationships. But certainly in your early days, when you might be a bit more desperate for the money, it might be a bit harder to get rid of people because you think you need that cash. But anything that's distracting you, anything that's distracting the team, is ultimately not going to take you where you want to be. Scalable systems are the core to building successful business. I've not just put that in for your 7-figure scaling systems benefit, but again, this has been one of my massive failings in my business life. I said a minute ago that for all the holidays and all the boat trips and everything else I do, I never really relax on them, never really enjoy them because I'm still working on parts of the business. The reason I'm doing that is because I haven't been good enough yet at building scalable, repeatable systems. Something I'm getting absolutely anal with now, not just with me, but with all my team. I mean, we always talk about the hidden cost of having to recruit people, but I think, the amount of time wasted, when I look back nowadays and say, we've just got rid of this person. Now, when this new person starts, we've got to teach them everything all over again. So much of this stuff is just simple, repeatable stuff that can all be built into standard operating procedures for your business. So, like I say, not just me, but with all my guys now, I'm saying take 30 minutes at the end of the day and look at what you've done today and write a little how-to sheet of that in Google Docs, in Notion, however you're doing it, so that, because it's not just how to do something, it's how you want something doing in your business, and those are two very different things. I mean, take accountancy for example. Across my group, we've got quite a few accountants. It's a position that, particularly on the lower ranks, we have to re-recruit quite regularly. As much as you may think accounting is accounting, there's ways we want things presenting, there's ways we want things inputting, and that can all be very simply documented and systematized. Have a simple personal life. Building a business is stressful. I think if you've got stress at home as well as having stress at work, it's either going to tear your hair out or it's going to limit your options and your opportunities. I've said simple doesn't have to be boring, but the amount of people who have got frightening personal lives with the missus or the mister or whatever it may be, when you're arguing, you're the bird all day or all night, you can't possibly have your head in the game. We all know what that could be. It could be like I'm talking about the place I bought in Spain that was ultimately putting pressure, putting complication. I've got a friend of mine who many years ago had an expression which was, every set of keys brings a different set of problems. And I think all of these are non-simplifications. So as simple as you can keep your personal life, the more effort and energy you'll have to put into your business life. The best business is one that works. How many times do we get told you've got to look at this business, you've got to look at the other business? Everybody's always looking for the next, for the next best thing, particularly nowadays. Again, with all the bollocks that's promoted on Instagram. What's good for you is not good for me. What's good for you is not good for him. So don't get caught up on the latest fads. If it doesn't make money, it's not a business. If you've got a problem that money can solve, then you haven't got a problem. I think whether that's in your personal life, in your business life, if you need to hire, if you've got something where staff could be hired to fix a problem, if you've got, I don't know, if you want to jump the queue, if you want to go on the comfy seat, not the hard seat, the amount of times I hear people with money moaning about their inability to do something when that problem can be fixed very easily by spending some money. What do we do all this for? We do all this to make money. If we're not going to use that money to make our lives easier, if we're not going to use it to solve problems, then there's probably no point going through the stress of earning that money in the first place. Another boring one, put 10% of your wage away each week. Whether it's 10%, 5%, 25%, you'll know what can work for you. And I look at me, and obviously I built businesses, but until I was about 36, 37, I literally didn't put a single penny away, ever. And I always remember my dad, but people used to say to my dad, who had a successful business and then ultimately went bankrupt as well, but unfortunately didn't recover. People used to ask if he had a pension, and he always used to say, no, my business is my pension. And I guess, it's that expression that got indoctrinated into me as well. But then I kind of look back now and think, well, hang on a minute. Okay, yes, you've got your business to be a pension, but why would you also not have a pension as well? Why would you also not have savings as well? And if I look back at my life, let's say in the 25 years of business, obviously I had times when I couldn't put a penny away, and I've had times when I could put fortunes away. But let's just take me, for example. I could have put $1,000 a week away every week for the last 25 years without it even, I wouldn't have even missed it in the slightest, probably more. Never mind the compounding interest, which I'm sure some of you mathematicians could do, just in pure capital terms, £1.5 million, couple of million quid could be stuck away. It sounds so boring now when we all want to do business, to buy watches, to go on holiday, to buy cars. But having had the kind of the good times and the bad times, to know that capital's there, whether it's for a safety net, whether it's to invest in something, I just think it's so important, and it's just so easy as well. And like I said, it might not be 10%, it might be 2%, it might be something, but you all have a figure that you could take and put away each week without it making the blindest bit of difference. And whilst I'm not here to give investment advice, what I do with mine now, which is, like I said, I've done for the last since I was 36, I like to think that my day-to-day job is where I take all my heavy risk. I do what I understand, but it is still heavy risk. So the money I put away, I do very boring things with. Goes into tracker funds, goes into a long-term Bitcoin, not trading Bitcoin, but just buying for the long term. Again, you'll know what it is for you, but don't do anything too crazy with it, because you can put it doing something very boring for 7, 8, 9, 10% a year, and know it's going to be there when you need it. And finally, brand beats everything. I cannot overstate the importance of having a strong brand, whether it's a strong business brand, whether it's a strong personal brand. We were talking at the beginning about being fundamentally different, not incrementally better. And I was saying that there are no new businesses, everything's oversaturated, and the only real way to stand out in an oversaturated market is by having a strong brand. Also, it ties in with having better margins, being able to charge more to your customers. And just for a little, actually, I'm a big Daniel Priestley fan. I'm sure some of you guys have heard of him. I had him on my podcast the other week, and something he was saying popped up on Instagram last night, actually, which was, think of a brand like the Eiffel Tower. And the Eiffel Tower's there in France. It's what everybody talks about. But it doesn't actually make any money. That's what attracts everyone. But all around the Eiffel Tower, you've got restaurants and shops and hotels and all the things that people go in because they've been there to see the Eiffel Tower. So think of your brand as that. You probably won't get paid for your brand, but it gives you the opportunity to sell a product, to meet people, to enter into other businesses and to enter into other opportunities. I think for me, the converse of that as well is if you've got a brand, but you're not taking advantage of opportunities, you're missing out on a big trick. I mean, how many Instagram influencers do we know that have got million plus followings, but then actually do nothing with it? The following itself isn't worth anything. It's what you're going to do with it thereafter. And that is the end of my talk. I hope that wasn't too long.
Hey, Matt here, just interrupting myself to say, I know that you guys like the content I give you because you send me messages and emails about it, but I also know not enough of you implement it. So maybe what you need is a one-on-one strategy call with me, for strategy, for consultancy, for advice, whatever it may be. Let's jump on the phone for 15 minutes. 15 minutes is all it takes for me to supercharge your business, to change your life. Click the link down below, book a call with me. I'll see you soon.